It being approximately 7 p.m., this is a meeting of the Foxborough Planning Board. I think we're going to be potentially in joint session with the some of, if not all of, the selectmen on this in order to discuss the application to the selectmen, not to us, for a pop-up for the Shoveltown people. And I just want people to understand that this is a public meeting, not a public hearing. So the rules are different in terms of our obligation to let conversation go on ad infinitum. We'd prefer it if people could keep their comments brief and, to the point. There's not going to be a vote of approval as a site plan from this board this evening. We are here simply as an adjunct to the Board of Selectmen. In the event that they make a decision to allow this use, that we will make recommendations if necessary regarding things that are on the application relative to setbacks, public safety, and protection of the neighbors on Shea Lane. With that being said, I'll open it up to whoever's going to be making the presentation this evening. Is there someone who's representing?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Just took me a second to get there.
That's okay.
Actually, could I make a statement very quickly?
Who is
Richard DeCoste from Shea Lane.
No, you may not.
Well,
you cannot make a statement yet, Mr. DeCoste. We're here to listen to the presentation.
No, I understand. But your email that you sent out, your letter you sent, said the meeting would start at 7:15, not 7 o'clock. So I don't see any of our neighbors or anybody on this. So I'm just requesting that as per your document, we start this meeting at 7:15.
Is that correct, Paige?
Yes.
Okay. And are there other matters we need to address before that?
Thank you for your attention.
You're no problem. Thank you.
Yeah, we have some minutes and other administrative items.
And your planning report as well, right?
Yes, I didn't print one, but I can offer one verbally.
Please do.
Okay, sure. So first of all, we have been working with, I can't remember the last time I spoke about it, but the local recovery grant we got, I think since I last met with you, we went out and walked around with the consultant, and I'm actually really excited about this project. This was the grant. I wasn't sure exactly what it was going to yield, but it was focused specifically on downtowns, and it was through the Massachusetts Downtown Initiative. We got a $60,000 grant for services from Beta Engineering. So the gentleman on the project team came out, and actually we walked the whole uptown area. They've been out on the site out in town again a couple more times. They're doing a tremendous inventory of our uptown, and the goal is to come up with some ideas and suggestions and plans to help activate for recovery from not only COVID, but just in general. I kind of wrote it that way, where we focused on, for example, the Central Street parking lot. We all know that while it's great that we have parking spaces there, it could use a little love, and maybe this grant could help us come up with a plan for how to achieve some of the needs there, and so on. So we were looking at other areas. They were talking very much about, again, what the theme has always been: activating public spaces and activating spaces. It was interesting because we talked about the obvious use of the common for outdoor dining. We were talking about putting more picnic tables out there so folks can grab food, uptown and go out and eat on the common. And they were even looking at areas that aren't as obvious that, like we were over by Town Hall and they were pointing out certain grassy areas. And they were like, you could even put a little something there. And then I showed them the patio at Town Hall, and they were talking about maybe getting some sort of shade structure or something to make that. So it was really an interesting way of I think I've been saying all along, there's been a big push on activating these public spaces and these outdoor spaces. So that's one exciting thing. The second bit of news, which I'm not sure the selectmen that are on here, if they've heard this yet, we just found out yesterday that the grant we submitted for the Complete Streets for that demonstration project on School Street, and also to address on a trial basis the Central Street, well, the leaving the Rotary to Central Street. Today, we had our first kickoff meeting on the Walnut Street project. As I've told you before, we got a grant from Mass Development to start an RFP and visioning process on that. So today, we met with the Housing Authority members and the consultant and Mass Development, and we're starting to work on designing that RFP. So I think you all, various people in this group will be hearing different parts of that as we move forward, because there's going to be quite a bit of work to be done over the next 2.5 months on that. And the goal is to get that RFP out by, say, the end of June, if possible. We did learn, some sobering facts about, these housing authority projects that do have to go out to RFP, which is the only way to do them now. I guess through the tax credit program, it takes upwards of 3 years to get into that tax credit program. So we are talking a long lead time, even, starting today, and doing all the work that needs to be done. And then the fall, we would not make, any team would never make this fall's round of tax increment finance, or not tax, tax credit financing for affordable housing at this year. So projects that start now wouldn't make the fall one. So we clearly won't. And then we'll be lucky to get into next year's round. But this is the only way to do it. So every step we take is one step forward. And but it is an exciting prospect that we started looking at. And we have so far issued, I believe it's 5 temporary outdoor dining permits so far this year, with 5 more pending. So, that's really starting to pick up. We're seeing a lot of activity there where folks want to do the outdoor dining. And I think that's about it right now. The housing production plan continues. I don't know if folks watched the cable show that a bunch of your your neighbor residents did a video about why they got involved in the housing plan and, why they thought it was important. And I would really ask that the residents watch this. It's kind of cool. It's only like 30 minutes and it's your neighbors talking, and I'm not on it at all. So that's good. You've heard me talk about housing enough. So the next one is going to be focused on infrastructure. And, we've heard a lot of concerns about water, not only for new housing development, but we know that the residents themselves are concerned with water. We're in a perpetual drought. I think one point was made at our last housing meeting about the water, though, is there will never be a time at this point in the state where we're not on a water ban in the summer. It's just, I've lived in the town of Franklin for 25 years. I've been in a water ban for 25 years. And so the reality is that the conservation effort is just such that there will always be a water ban. Now, I believe what happened last year was different. There was water going on, there was maintenance issues going on that put our reserves, made it more difficult. But generally speaking, there's plenty of water in the ground. It's just that we're not always allowed to remove it at the pace that we want to. So we're going to be delving into that a bit with Chris Gallagher to sort of explore that, not only for, a little bit of the primer of what's went on last year and what's going to happen this year, but then looking at the natural concerns of why would we be proposing more housing when we can't even water our grass in the summer? So that's a conversation that needs to be had. And we'll also be looking at the schools, because that's another concern, and taxes, and why would we want to do any affordable housing when none of us really wants to see any change to our taxes or any stresses on our schools. So we're delving into that. The comments were heard, and we are trying to make this plan really address these issues. And I do admit it's torture, but I hope you'll all stick with it. And again, watch that video and try to stay involved, because, we do have some really important things. Today I learned, here's a sobering fact, and you'll wonder why we get involved. Today we learned that on the list right now, the Foxborough Housing Authority list, 8,000 senior citizens have asked to live in Foxborough. Now, not only Foxborough, and 9,000 families, 2 separate lists, 8,000 seniors and 9,000 families are seeking housing in Foxborough and the surrounding areas. So this is an extreme issue, and I know it's not every individual's problem, but it is something that matters, and it matters. It trickles down to all of us. So that's why I'm not trying to change your community or do any of that, but that's why housing does matter. So I'll get off my soapbox on that, and I will turn it back over to Kevin.
Just
Thank you.
one quick question. Well,
Sure.
two things. One is I did watch the video and I thought it was very informative. It was interesting to see four or five different people who had different backgrounds, different lengths of time living in the town, different needs, and why they want to see things change in order to support a variety of different types of housing. And the other question I had for you, Paige, was where did that study about the 8,000, 9,000, where did that come from?
That was from today in our call with the Housing Authority. Maggie, the executive director over there, just said, we said, what's the current state? And she said 8,000, right? Gabby, am I right? It was 8. I don't expect you to remember, but I wrote it down. It was 8,000 for the senior citizen, and it was 9,000 for families. So, because I remember thinking it was combined at first, and then she clarified it after that, and I was shocked to learn. I mean, I wasn't shocked, but I was shocked. I thought last I had heard there was like 400. So I was a little surprised to hear about the thousands. Sobering. Yeah.
So we have a couple more minutes. Can we talk about past minutes that were submitted that need to be approved? Diana, Gabby, anybody who knows which ones those were?
The only minutes that are outstanding are the March 25th.
Okay, and have they been reviewed? Anybody make corrections or anything that you know?
Gary was the only one said that he was fine with them. I didn't hear from anybody else.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Need to do a roll call.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
That's okay. So Jeff is an aye, Ron is an aye, Gary,
Aye.
Tracy,
Tracy, you're on mute.
that's a first.
I know, it's really an eye.
Is that an aye?
It's an eye.
Okay, and Kevin is an aye. Very good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just before we go on further, I just want to get back to Paige's report. And Paige, you were talking about your downtown parking, and I happen to be out in the general Milford area quite a bit over the past couple of months. And in Milford, they have used some of their banners, like every town seems to be in the banner business now, for directing to public parking. And I'm going to send you a picture of that just so you can see it. It seemed to be pretty effective, but just something to keep in mind going forward.
That's great. Yes, and subject to DPW, I mean, they have their hands just slightly full, but our wayfinding signs are in, and we do anticipate those to go up soon, and those will actually make clear where the parking spaces are. So we can't wait to get them up. I know it's a little bit more than just throwing signs up. They have to put some poles up. So I know they've got a lot on their plate, but any day now we're going to see those. And and by the way, next week during the nighttime, I believe they're going to try to get that concrete in the ground in front of the Orpheum. They're going to try to do it overnight so as to not disrupt traffic, but they are trying this week to get it in.
Good.
They do a lot of stuff, that group.
Okay, anything else that we need to discuss in the last minute before we go back to the public meeting issue? Gab, you have anything on open subdivisions or anything else?
Sorry. No, the subdivisions are, as you know, with real estate, everything's going like crazy. The River Ridge they're selling the lots as soon as they make them available. So they're hoping to be able to finish construction this year or early part of next year. So that's very exciting.
Okay. All right. All right, thank you, Mr. DeCoste, for reminding us that we posted this as 7:15. So just to get back to what I was starting to state earlier, just to let the audience know that this is a public meeting. It is not a public hearing. We are really not here to discuss the use matter. If that's really going to come down to the Board of Selectmen and whether they see fit to grant the liquor license, which would allow for this type of use to go forward. So we're not going to review this for use. This is the issue at hand here is that it potentially could be allowed under the governor's order that has allowed these type of uses to be put into effect in a variety of towns and cities across the Commonwealth. We're really not, here to be making recommendations on possible conditions, only if the Board of Selectmen approves. Even if there are members who are in favor, the real issue here is to look at us recommending conditions that would protect the Shea Lane residents and others from impacts if the use goes through. So as a reminder, because it's not a public hearing, we aren't obligated to have every single person speak who has a point of view about the particular matter at hand. If you do have something you'd like to say, we'd like you to be as succinct as you can. We prefer if people would not be repetitively, repeating the same issues as their neighbors or abutters might be. And that if you are out there and want to speak, please use the raise your hand function, because we may not see every single person and it's not okay for everybody to just jump in willy-nilly. But if you do that, I'm sure that we'll get to you. That being said, then, yes, Mr. Bressi?
Mr. Chairman, I believe there are 3 members of the Board of Selectmen here tonight.
Okay.
And they should probably open their meat as well.
I don't think, I don't
they
think
don't
this
need
is
to?
a joint
Okay.
meeting. This
It's
is,
not a joint meeting.
no.
Okay.
No,
So, but clearly they're welcome. I know that they posted it in the event that a full board wanted to sit in on
Okay.
this. But I think they're here just to, see what happens within our meeting and get a feeling for what the planning board might or might not recommend relative to a final decision.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
So that being said, then I will open it up to whomever is going to make the presentation on behalf of Shoveltown in this use.
Yes, so this is Frank Altieri. I am the co-owner of Shoveltown Brewery, along with my business partner, James McSherry, who's also on the line today. And we will discuss the Taste of Foxborough and our vision for it. First of all, we'd like to, take this opportunity to thank the board for allowing us to review the proposal that we put in front of the town. And I think I'd also like to say, and this is truthfully from my heart, that we care about this community. We want to be a part of it. We're going to open a second brewery location. We've committed, a lot of resources to be here. And we want to make this a good experience for everyone. We believe this is an exciting opportunity that, a few of the things have aligned that would allow for this to happen. And what we don't want to do is alienate anyone from the community against what we're trying to do. We also want to make sure that you're aware that, we will take into consideration comments that are reasonable and that we can act against. But if there's too much dissension or too much activity that we need to employ to make this happen, it can't happen, because while many people might think that, it's like printing money, it really isn't. There's a huge amount of expense that has to go into this to make this happen. And this could be a very good and unique opportunity for a community to have a venue like this, albeit temporary, in outdoors, that would allow for people who have been indoors for a long period of time to come out and enjoy the outdoors, have something to eat, listen to some music or entertainment that might include people from your community, like dance groups or the cheerleading group from Foxborough High School, or the dance group from Foxborough High School, performing to the community. And so I believe, and Jim and I believe, this is a unique opportunity for us to create a great environment for everyone. And we don't want to alienate anyone, and we don't want to create an undue burden upon anyone. But you have to recognize that this is a commercial lot that eventually will be developed as a commercial entity, whether it be another restaurant or a trampoline park or some other entity that is going to be in that park. That being said, what we are proposing is establishing this event called A Taste of Foxborough, which would be a local food and craft beer pop-up. It would be temporary. We're only asking for a license for this summer. It would commence in the middle of May. We're hoping to pick up Memorial Day, and then hopefully go all the way till the end of October and ending on Halloween, and capture those things. But if it kind of dies off in the end of September or October, we would probably, if it doesn't make sense to run it in those times, we wouldn't. But we're asking for a license that would allow us to maximize and take advantage of those opportunities. I know many of you may have heard what this the plan was, but basically it was, on that site there would be a 20 by 30 tent with tables underneath, and then tables with umbrellas on the outside. The site would be handicap accessible, family friendly, feature food from either other local restaurants and Shoveltown. We need to have a core food presence because we need to ensure that there's food there so we can operate under the COVID guidelines. But if there's other restaurants that would like to come and as a pop-up for one day, we would allow that and have them there. We want to really introduce ourselves to the community. So we want this to be an opportunity for us to showcase what we've done. In Easton, I don't want to sound like, bragging here, but they love us in Easton. We support the community. We support things like kids soccer, baseball, Girl Scout cookies, all types of different things. And not only do we do that, we support other businesses. We do things like have the farmer's daughter do a brunch at our location. We use Langwater Farm produce in our our menu offerings. I can't even remember how many different organizations that we've partnered with, and basically have really developed a community relationship. And if you go, and I think you ask anybody in Easton, they recognize Shoveltown Brewery as a key contributor to the community in many ways. So what we're asking for is a pop-up type environment, and these types of pop-ups have happened all over the country, all over Boston. They're extremely popular. They're popular with families. It's not, just, and I think it has a bad perception that this is going to be a huge drinking type thing. That's not what these are about. These are about family, and these are about community. And that's what we're proposing here, is an event, a venue that is for families and communities. At that point, we have gotten some comments from the planning board, and we've addressed those. We've updated our site plan to reflect some of the concerns that have been already identified. And if you'd like us to go through those concerns, our consultant on the site plan, Bill Buckley, will be more than glad to do that.
I do. I think that would be appropriate so everybody can see what it is you're proposing and what steps you've taken relative to any comments that you've heard and in other meetings.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bill Buckley from Bay Colony Group, and I'm here representing the applicant. And what I'd like to do is to go through our site sketch here that we've prepared. This is a little bit different. It's been revised, as Frank said, as a result of the discussions that we've had amongst ourselves based on all the comments we received at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, both from professional staff, board members, as well as neighbors. So this is a rendering. You have the actual site plan, but I think this is a better picture. If you look over here to the right, where my hand is moving, this is the site. This is behind Conrad's Restaurant. This is a parcel of land that originally, in the original design for the state hospital, was going to be Form A lots. And as part of the state hospital was permitted back in 2005 to 2007, and we all know what happened in 2007 to the real estate market. So some of the modifications that were made actually impacted this piece of property. Shea Lane, in the original design, was going to be all single-family homes. And as part of the modification, one of the things that was changed was Shea Lane went to all duplexes. And because the state hospital project has a limitation on the number of residential units on it, I think it was 302 or 203. Kevin would know, 203. And so it limited the number of, planning board just couldn't say, yeah, go ahead and do duplexes. So those units had to come from somewhere, and 3 of them came from this location. And so this site, the entire state hospital is built out by now, and it has the 203. This site will be some type of commercial use. We've actually gone through the permitting process with the planning board in the past, and it was an office building at one time. It was never built again. It was just prior to 2007. But this is going to be a commercial use. It is in the Chestnut Basin Overlay District. The Chestnut Basin Overlay District does allow restaurant use with seating. I know this isn't a restaurant, but it's the closest thing to that by special permit with the planning board. And this site could have buildings on it and will someday. It could be as close to as 20 feet to the rear lot line and 40 feet high. I don't think it will ever go there, but that's what the zoning allows. So just give you some feel for, what the underlying zoning is here, because I know that was a question that was made. So what we're showing is as Frank went through here, it is in the yellow, that is the seating area. So we've shown that in yellow, and there's about 28 tables in there. We show them as picnic tables so they could seat as many as 6 people. We don't think that's a realistic number, probably going to average around 4, some 2s, some 6s, but it's 28 picnic tables. Only a few of them are actually underneath the tent. There's several buildings on it. So the first is where I'm showing you right here. This is the main food trailer, and I know it's hard to see. Let me actually zoom in on it a little bit. So this is the main food trailer right here. This is the tent I was talking about. This is the pizza trailer, and this is the bathrooms, and it will be, kind of a trailer bathroom. All of these will be tied into the municipal water and sewer, which service the site already. There's already sewer connections and water connections to the site. We'll be bringing them into the site. The site will also have electric. So one of the questions was discussed was generators. There will be no generators on the site. The site will have power from National Grid, and then water and sewer, as I discussed. The outside of this, we're just proposing it to be fenced off. I mean, it's not a security fence. We're just thinking of a fence with, hooks, loops with a chain to just let people know that this is the area that you're sitting in and don't be wandering in and out of it. because there'll be alcohol served within it. One of the major modifications we've made to this as a result of the discussions we had is along the frontier, we've placed concrete blocks. So these are 2 foot by 2 foot by 4 foot concrete blocks, and they're just concrete blocks. That's just what they are. They weigh about half a ton each, actually a little bit more than half a ton. And we'll be placing them along the front. They'll be spaced maybe 3 feet apart. There are several large trees in there that we'll be placing them around. And what those are meant is in the unlikely event that a car comes across the curb for some reason, that will act as a barrier for there. In addition, one of the other things we did is adding, these are just regular bumpers along the back of these parking spaces, which are nose in to the seating area. And again, that will act if somebody accidentally puts the car in forward into reverse, they're going to hit a 6-inch bumper that will definitely notify them that they're not there. One of the things we added, actually it's not on this rendering, unfortunately, this was created before we added them, but there was also a concern about, cars going across the grass and exiting this driveway. Again, in my mind, unlikely, but we've added bumpers along the rear, along here as well. So these parking spaces, there are 58 parking spaces on the site. And we've talked about, we've thought about bringing this in as a one-way. So this would be one-way coming in here. This is the back entrance to the Chestnut Green shopping area. We have a deeded right to access it through here. There's actually, this gray is already existing, so the turnout was created. So you'd come in, you'd go through, come around, and leave this way. We've added signs to some signage to the project, again, because of issues we were hearing about. So there would be an entrance sign right over here, a taste of Foxborough pop-up entrance. So people would know to come in this location. And then over here on this end, we would have signs that would be on this side, which was the north side, do not enter, to tell people not to come in that way. And on the side facing the site, the south side, we would direct them for additional, we want to have something that says additional parking. And we would be directing them over to the 10 Payson Road parking lot. So parking seems to be a large issue. So this is, and I should have extended this better, but so here's the site. Right over here is the auditorium, and around the auditorium that wraps around this side and the back of it, there's a municipal parking lot. That parking lot was built, that was designed as part of the master plan for the Foxborough State Hospital redevelopment. So it's 134 spaces, it was built by the developer. It's on municipal land, but the developer does have a right to use it. So if the town wanted to all of a sudden sell it, hey, we're going to sell this and make money, they can't. Because part of the deal was to build that municipal parking lot, that an easement would be granted, and that easement was granted by town meeting. But it is a public parking lot, and all of the documents say as such. So that parking lot, again, when we were doing the initial design for the state hospital, and when I say me, I don't just mean me, this was a collaborative effort by a lot of people, townspeople on a lot of committees holding a lot of hearings. So parking was identified as an issue, and this parking lot was placed there. One of the reasons is because it's central to everything. So it supports the playing fields, it supports the offices, it supports the retail. So it's in kind of a central location and could be used for overflow. I've seen it being used for some of the athletic activities, and even in the offices, back when people actually went to offices, it would be used for them as well. So that's one of the ways we thought. And we would place signage. We're talking about placing a message board here, pointing them toward municipal parking. And the message board would be there because it would be temporary. So we put it out when we start open, and when we close, we take it back. And then we would place another message board over there at the municipal lot. Although I'd like to see Jeff's flag because maybe that might be something that could be used if it's a temporary thing. So that's what our thought is to move people over in that direction. Some of the other things we're doing is there's a berm there now. So we cleared this lot. It's pretty much cleared. You can follow my hand, and we show the existing edge of the existing gravel lot. So the vast majority of the portions that we're going to be used is already cleared and gravelled, and the remainder will be. When that was done, a berm was created with the excess material. So down in this area here, we show it, and I'm showing it on the plan, and I'm leaving it there. We're talking about leaving it. First, we were talking about, well, we'll pick it up and we'll use that material and we'll put it along the property line to put trees on. But then we said, no, we'll just leave it there, because one of the issues that was brought up was, well, how are you going to stop people from parking, going through the parking and parking back there? So one of the things we've done is, just like we do at stadium events for those gravel parking lots, we use barrels and striping, but this will also create a berm along the back as well. And then finally, one of the other things that we've done is along the back row here, we're talking about planting 6-foot high arborvitaes, 6 feet on center and 2 staggered rows on a 2-foot high earth berm. Why do we pick that? It's because if in the zoning bylaw, when a non-residential use abuts a residential use, you have to provide a 20-foot wide buffer, and it has to contain 6-foot high plantings, 6 feet on center, and 2 staggered rows. So what we've provided is what the zoning would require if this was a real site plan use. And actually, we've added the earth berm as well to pick up, to give a little more height to it. So you're looking at something that on day one will be at least 8 feet high. And I said finally, but I'm not finally. One more thing I wanted to talk about was lighting. So for the most part, in the summertime, lighting is not going to be an issue because of the time of the operating hours. However, later in the season, in September and in October, if it goes that long, it does get dark around 7:30, 7 o'clock. So what we're proposing is inside here, just inside this area, we will be using those 2-watt strung lightings, those LED lights that you see, like you see over at Union Straw. I think they look really nice and they're innocuous, but they do provide light. So that's how we would like that area there. There wouldn't be any other light. There's a street light right in front of the site. Of course, the public safety building is lit up across the street. And along the back of this building, we've actually located the lights. And these are lights that are, they're wall packs, and they're not pointing out, but they do provide ambient light. Now, we don't want to have a lot of light. To give you some idea, the playing fields over there, they don't have any light either. I mean, they have, when the lights are on, I mean, it lights the area up, but they don't have any lights for the parking lots. So, we think that would be appropriate, and we don't want to place lighting in there. We don't want to put lights on any poles to do that. So I think I'll stop right there, Mr. Chairman, and if there's any questions or.
Can you just address a couple of things from me, Bill? One would be within the perimeter of the actual site there, where the people are parking. Can you talk about pedestrian access so they can get into the yellow area for seating and food, et cetera?
There's to be 2 gates. This would be the main gate for people to walk in. You can see this is where we put the handicap accessibility, because it has to be the closest. So this would be the main gate. And this would be over here as a service area. So if they were going to bring in, anybody was going to bring in the beer or any of the other things, used it. So this is the only access point for people, and that's how they'll be able to control population and check people.
So essentially, though, if I park, right at the very tip there, over near there, I would have to walk back around here and cross over in some fashion to get in.
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of people who follow your guideline, to the overflow parking on Payson Road, what, if any, not restrictions, but, public safety issues do you have so that if they're walking over, that, that they'll be, safe before and after an event?
So you know better than anybody is that,
police officer just to, make sure the traffic doesn't affect people who are walking over that area? Or do you think there's other matters that you can take into consideration to make sure people are safe walking from the Payson Road area?
so, again, to go back some more history of the state hospital. I'm not sure about the number, pretty darn close. I would say close to $4 million was built on infrastructure improvements down here, all part of the master plan. And one critical component of the master plan was the walkability of the entire site. So we have sidewalks, Chestnut Street, sidewalks were built, Payson Road sidewalks were built, North Street sidewalks were built, and then sidewalks within the facilities and even walkways around, around the playing fields. So one of the things that was done, we have here is, if you follow my hand, so the park, this is the parking area up there. There's a sidewalk along Payson Road. You come around the corner, the radius, and right here, there's a handicap accessibility on both sides, and there is a crosswalk. So that's how we think that they're going to get from there to there. There'll be sidewalk all the way across. They have an accessible ramp. There is a marked crosswalk here, and they'll be able to walk right into the facility.
All right, thank you. So I'll ask for any other questions or comments from the board first, and then we can open it up for.
Yeah, if I may, Kevin, this is Gary.
Please do.
My biggest concern right now is with the parking, as you stated, Bill. But what do we do to protect the tenants that are over in Chestnut Green Plaza there? The Learning Center and probably more importantly, Conrad's. What's to keep people from parking there and then walking over to the Wormtown? It's going to be a shorter walk than going to the auditorium.
There is, I don't think there's any way. I mean, it would be education. We would, I guess we would have to do on our website, we would have to, notify people where to park. You can park here, don't park there. I don't know what else we could do. If you wanted, or if it was somebody thought it was appropriate, we could put more boards over there at the entrance by the back entrance of Walgreens there, that main entrance, and say, no Taste of Foxborough parking, use 10 Payson Road. I mean, I wish I could say that there's a perfect solution. There isn't. It would be education, and we could use some signage as well.
Is that something on a busy night we could possibly request some sort of a security personnel of some sort? I don't necessarily think it has to be a police detail, but somebody there just to say, I see where you're parking and you're walking around the building, it doesn't work. You could be towed or something to that effect. I don't know. We're certainly not going to tow. The selectmen could
tow anybody on private property. That's, I guess Shop Foxy could tow somebody if they found that they weren't there. Maybe we can say that right on the board. Violators would be towed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I said that's one of my main concerns. I mean, those tenants over there have a right to some parking for their patrons as well. And any overflow there is going to end up in Walgreens parking lot. If I want to go to Conrad's for a drink, I don't want to walk that far. Sorry.
We're committed to placing signage in those lots to discourage parking.
Ron, did you want to say something?
Yes, another thing that was brought up at the selectmen's meeting would be to address potential parking on Shea Lane. Mr. Buckley, have you looked into that at all?
I have not. I know it was brought up. I really doubt anybody's going to park on Shaver Lane and walk across private property and then crawl through a 6-foot high hedge and over a berm. But if we wanted, we could put up over on Shea Lane the same type of barn board, or I call it barn board, it's a breadboard, where it says, no parking for Taste of Foxborough, violators will be towed, something like that. We could.
I think that would help with the concerns of the people that live on Shea Lane.
Tracy, did you have something you wanted to say?
I did. I was hoping Richie Noonan can kind of weigh in from a public safety standpoint.
Is Mr. Noonan here?
He was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. So Mr. Buckley did hit it on the head in regards to the crosswalks that are on both sides of Chestnut Street, connecting Payson Road to the public parking lot on Payson Road. In regards to Shea Lane, the signs that Mr. Buckley is talking about would not be enforceable. They have to be DPW regulations. They have to be approved by the town. It could be a good warning notice for the patrons that may park down there to deter them, but would not be enforceable. If it became a continual issue, the chief of police could issue temporary no parking signs that would be enforceable. And we could bring that, if that continued to be a process, we could bring forward to the Board of Selectmen. And also in regards to the Conrad's parking lot, again, that's private property. So it would be the responsibility of that parking lot owner to tow those cars after proper posting. They'd be responsible to contact the tow company for that. That would not be a police action.
Right. I meant more with some private security if necessary, or some personnel.
Right. I just didn't want people to think that if they called that we would go over there and tow because it's private property. We would not be able to.
Right.
Is it possible to, where you said if there was a problem on Shea Lane, that the chief of police could issue the no parking, temporary no parking? Could that be done proactively, or would it have to be reactionary if there's issues?
It'd be in conjunction with the DPW and the Board of Selectmen. There's regulations in regards to street parking.
Okay.
And that could also impact the neighbors as well.
Understood. Thank you.
Kevin?
Yes, please.
I would just say, and I think the issue of parking is one of the pivotal issues. I mean, there are certainly others. Some of them we're not going to deal with, that will be dealt with by the Board of Selectmen through that licensing process. But as someone who kind of has spent my time at these types of establishments, certainly not bragging about that, but I must say that I think that 58 spaces is a lot based on my experience, on-site spaces. I mean, it is certainly very common that there may be contiguous properties in off hours that are kind of used in overflow situations. So I don't want to suggest that, you might never be in a scenario where you're going to be in an overflow. I think, as a matter of fact, there probably will be times that you are, but that's a chunk of parking on site for this type of establishment, this type of facility, and this type of use. But one of the other things I was thinking, and Mr. Buckley was talking about, signage, and Mr. Altieri was talking about signage relative to parking issues, and also redirecting patrons or potential patrons to the overflow area, is I think you also have to be mindful that there would be two types of patrons, arriving, well, actually by vehicle. Certainly patrons will arrive by foot, and I think everybody is aware of that. But for those that arrive by vehicle, you're going to have vehicles that are driving through the site and then potentially not finding on-site parking at some peak periods, and they're going to leave. And I just want to make sure that there would be some internal signage as well in that loop road to direct people where they need to go, if that's the case.
So I have one other question for Mr. Altieri. In the event that you're full, I know it's the maximum. The maximum would be 6 people at every of the 28 tables. But even if it's not quite that full, how would people who are kind of queuing up, waiting for a table or waiting for an opportunity to get in and have a beer or a sandwich or whatever? Are there standing room only areas for people who won't have a seat, or how will you deal with people who are in queue and want an opportunity to sit down and enjoy what it is you're providing?
Yeah, so today what we do is we take their name and we put them on an electronic waiting list. That would be the same activity that we would do. And tell them that we will contact them when a table opens up.
So you would send them a text, or someone would phone them and say, Smith party of 3, you're allowed to enter now.
Exactly.
Okay.
We do that today.
Okay.
That's already in place.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could I just follow that up? So is the applicant committing then to not having any non-seated patrons? I mean, I understand you've got your game area where people will kind of go over there, but is the idea that you have seating for your capacity, and that if you don't have that seating, totally utilized, like maybe you have 4 people at your tables instead of 6, is it your position that you intend to admit up to the stated capacity of 180, or is it going to be a seated capacity?
So under the COVID requirements today, everyone has to be seated at a table.
Okay.
So that we're going to follow the COVID requirements.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody who's representing the Board of Selectmen, any questions you may have at this time? Hearing none, I will open it up for anybody else who has questions or comments about what they've seen in this presentation. Just raise your hand and we'll call on you.
Just a reminder, we need their name and address when they speak.
Yes, name and address for when you speak. I can't see anyone right now.
Mr. DeCoste has his hand up.
Okay, please, Mr. DeCoste, I didn't see you, but please feel free to state your case.
Thank you. Am I unmuted?
You are.
Okay, thank you. My name is Richard DeCoste, resident 12A Shea Lane, which is directly behind the site. I just want to first say that none of the residents at Shea Lane are against this use. We just think it's in the wrong place. It doesn't meet all of the guidelines of the zoning code that's in place to protect us. We think there's probably a better location for it. But there's been a lot of issues that were just outlined, and I've tried to take some notes on it. So what I'd like to do is just read down the notes and then just give a brief 1-sentence thing just to let you know what our issues are, but not going into a lot of detail of those issues. First one is that Mr. Altieri said he cares about the community, doesn't want to alienate the community, but we have never heard from him. He's never sent us a piece of mail, an email, a telephone call. He's never knocked on the door, but yet he's met with every board and department in town to do this without any input from us. And that just isn't due process. That isn't the way this should work. He also mentioned having dance groups and cheerleaders. When you look at that site plan, there is space within the yellow area that's shown on the site plan that has 28 tables, 4 people per table. If you just average it out, it's 112 people. Even if you say 120 people, because there might be 5 or 6 at different tables, that leaves about 60 people who are going to be queued up in the parking lot, or they're going to be sitting in their car in the parking lot, or they could be down in the overflow parking lot. They're going to get a text and they'll have to come down the street or do whatever. That's not good COVID guidelines to have all these, 60 people waiting around, waiting to go in there. They did say that they wouldn't be able to eat or drink, which is a good thing. But where would these dance groups and cheerleaders be?
In the game area. In the game area, we would close that off, and that's where we would have the stage.
Okay. One of the other things is you keep saying that this is not a restaurant, but in fact, you're bringing in raw ingredients. You're bringing in, you're cooking those raw ingredients. You're plating them, then you're serving them with wait staff and taking away the dishes. I mean, that's the very definition of a restaurant. And in fact, even I talked to the Board of Health, who is defining this as a restaurant under their guidelines. And they're making you plumb in all of the trailers. They're making you plumb in the toilets. And it was very disheartening when I talked to them. He said you were tying into the town sewer. Well, there's no town sewer here. It's a private sewer. He didn't know that. Was this use even considered the extra capacity in this new kind of wastewater to go into that plant? The plant is not supervised by the town, it's supervised by the DEP. So the town should be trying to figure out if it has the capacity for a restaurant on this site rather than an office building use. Does it have the capacity for this type of wastewater versus just standard office use? There's a lot of concerns about that treatment plant that I think need to be addressed up front before this use goes in. The next item is, the updated site plan. One of the things I talked about was the landscaping. They do show a landscape buffer behind the site abutting Shea Lane. That same landscape buffer needs to be applied on the right-hand side of the site or the east side because that's abutting housing. The housing might be owned by Doug King, but it is housing. It is a different use, and he could sell that tomorrow, and that needs to be buffered. We also don't feel that that buffer is adequate. The winds whip through there in some storms. We get trash through there all the time. It's a mess over there, and there'll be noise. You got 180 people potentially there, or at least 120 sitting. You've got music. You've got all these trailers. You've got cars driving around in circles. It's a lot of noise, and I don't think that would meet the requirements as set forth in the zoning guidelines for the noise. Look at my list here. You say that no generators, that everything will be electrical, but there is refrigeration equipment that will be running. And that equipment will have to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because if you have material stored there, then you got to keep it cold. You can't shut it off and come back on Thursday and turn it back on. The Board of Selectmen just dealt with an issue down at Judy's Flowers about one refrigeration truck that is bothering the neighbors down there. This might be 2 or 3. That noise was going to be there all day long and all night long. And during the summertime, we won't even be able to open our windows. Parking that was addressed, 58 spaces. That will accommodate roughly 116 people, which means at peak time, there's 64 parking spaces that need to be accounted for. Now, the overflow might account for that, but in one of your briefs, you said that you're looking forward to having a lot of out-of-town people come here. Well, out-of-town people don't know where to go and what to do. So they're going to be driving around in circles in this parking lot. They're not going to be able to find a space. They might go down Payson Road, but they might take a right onto Chestnut. And if you've ever been on Shea Lane, we have our share of cars just drive down here, turn around in the cul-de-sac and leave, primarily because Doug King still has a sign up that houses are for sale. And these days, everybody's looking for houses. So we have a line of traffic just on a mid-afternoon of cars up and down the street. And there are a lot of kids and grandkids who are on this street. If people can't find spaces, they're going to naturally want to come down this street. Even if we have a lot of signage on the street that says no parking, you will be towed, then, they're just going to turn around. So we're going to have a line of cars coming around. We're going to hear all the cars circling the parking lots that can't find spots. Talked about lighting was another issue. The lighting that's certainly at Union Straw is fine. It's acceptable. It would be screened from us by the trailers, but the parking lot is a real concern, because if there's no lighting in the parking lot and you have elderly people like me who want to go there, you have handicapped people in wheelchairs or on crutches walking across gravel in the dark, that's a real issue. That's a real safety issue that needs to be addressed. And the minute you put lights back there, then it's an issue for Shea Lane. Let me see. My other concern, one of the other concerns we have that doesn't really affect Shea Lane to a great extent, is that cars coming down Payson are going to try and cut across Chestnut to turn into the driveway to get into this site. There's going to be cars coming down from the rotary on Chestnut trying to take a right. There's going to be cars coming down Chestnut trying to take a left. There'll be cars coming out the end of the one-way driveway trying to turn either left or right. So peak times, there's going to be a traffic jam there. And if there's any backup of cars and there's some kind of an issue that the police and fire have to respond to, it's going to reduce their time to get out and respond to these fires. That's a real concern. And those trucks, we hear them all day, are in and out a lot, especially the police department. So, that's an issue. Talked about security personnel, monitoring parking. That doesn't do Shea Lane any good. If you put signs up, or you said you might not put signs up, but maybe later you could, that there's a whole process to go through with the selectmen and the DPW. By the time it becomes an issue, we get to all these boards, they say, okay, this is over. So, we wouldn't have any relief whatsoever about cars on our street here.
So Mr. DeCoste.
Yep.
I understand, we've discussed these concerns, we've addressed them.
Well, you discussed them, you haven't addressed them.
Well, I think we have addressed some of them, but what would you like us to do? What do you have a list of things that you would like us to implement?
Well,
do you have solutions?
We have two things. One is we don't believe this is allowed under zoning. We don't believe it's allowed under the COVID regulations or any other regulations. So therefore, we don't believe it should be here.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Somebody who has the zoning knowledge, so I'm going to look to Gabby and Paige. Is this right? Is this use allowed in this area? Because I think that if the answer is yes, it dispels a lot of the neighbors, not a lot, but it dispels one of the major arguments against the pop-up. Is this use allowed on the site? Paige or
Mr.
Gabby?
Buckley did give a history of the site.
Excuse me, Mr. DeCoste, let the zoning experts and the town officials please respond.
I'm sorry, I thought she was finished.
So Tracy, yes, so it's zoned R15, but it's within the Chestnut Payson Overlay District, which the petition that was submitted did mention that restaurants are not allowed. However, they referenced the wrong section. So I think it was number 7 under the Chestnut Payson. By special permit, a restaurant would be allowed in the in this district, much like the one next door. I mean, this one next door. But so yes, it is an allowed use by special permit, but as you know, we're not doing under the conventional zoning. So that's why this isn't being done that way.
Okay, so it is let me just state very clearly for everybody, this is a permissible use. Thanks, Paige.
Can I respond to that?
You
If,
may, as long as you keep it short, because I'm sure there's other people who want to speak to them.
I'm sure my neighbors are chomping at the bit to speak, but if you read the COVID regulations, I don't think there's any doubt that they say this is for existing restaurants. It's for expansion of existing spaces. We wrote that in the memo that we just sent over to you this afternoon. Expansion of outdoor table service. You issue an amended license to an existing license holder for current and original permit applications. That has nothing to do with new restaurants. This is a new restaurant. It's not existing, and it doesn't fall under the COVID guidelines. And I'm wondering, did the town ever go to the state and find out from the state, is there a clarification from this? Are there other towns who have interpreted it just like you? I think we've got to resolve this issue first. We would be glad to sit down with a list of items, go through every item, work through them. If it's going to be here, let's make it amenable to everybody to do it. But let's find out if it's even permissible to be here first.
Well, I honestly don't think we'd be having this discussion if Bill Keegan and Mike Johns and the appropriate folks in town had deemed that it is a permissible use. So I think we need to move on. We've got other folks who want to speak, and we're going to, our belief, and it has been confirmed, is that it's a permissible use. So based on that, I think we should move on with the discussion.
And just to clarify, Mr. DeCoste, town council has had more than one conversation directly with the liquor control board about this, and how it would be allowed under which circumstances. So I think we have to presume that the Board of Selectmen, the town manager, and town council have given this a serious look, and they wouldn't be considering it if it didn't meet the sniff test. I can tell you that sometime last year, prior to them getting their actual location at the fire station while they were waiting, they came before both boards to request it, and they were denied out of hand because they didn't have the official go-ahead to begin the work and the construction of the new Shoveltown Brewery. And that's changed now, and I think that's one of the things that opened the door for them to make this application.
And Kevin, just to clarify, just to clarify, it never went to the planning board or the Board of Selectmen. It actually stopped at the staff level. So that's why
So there you go.
I want to be consistent with the
No, thank you for
it never
correcting.
got to you guys.
Yeah.
Just like this is the first you guys are hearing this. Like, I know one comment was that you didn't inform, but this isn't something you all have been working on for a while. We've
No,
been,
not at all.
professional staff has been troubleshooting and trying to figure this out, which is what we do for pretty much any project. That's how it works. Developers come to us, we deal with them, we go through the process, and then the public process begins. So this is the first time this board is actually even hearing about this, I believe.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just say something here too, if you don't mind. So let's establish a couple things here. First of all, the company that's before the town right now is an established restaurant and company. They already have a license to operate in another community. It doesn't matter if being Foxborough, but they do operate. They are a current restaurant. The issue is whether or not they have the ability to operate here, which in fact they are going to own a building here. There's no question about that. I think I think we're getting a little bit hung up on the issues of whether or not that the executive order applies here. And the answer to that is that this was the intent of the order was to put in place opportunities where people could in fact could dine outside or have be entertained outside. And this was an opportunity for communities to be creative in doing things like this. I think the fact that they are in fact a licensed holder of an operation in another community is the fact that they met that guideline in terms of the executive order. I'm going to confirm again with town council on that very point, but they do believe that they do meet that requirement. And if they don't, then obviously that's something we'll have to look at. But we've had the conversations internally over and over again about what the intent of of the executive order was, and that was to try and create opportunities where communities could be creative and work with situations that would be in the best interest of trying to get people outside and do outdoor opportunities during a difficult time. And I think that was the whole concept from the beginning.
One last thing, and then I'm going to mute myself. We've heard everybody say what they think this is. Could we receive something in writing that specifically states exactly in writing what the statutes say and how they're interpreted?
Well, it's not a statute, Mr. DeCosta. It is executive order from the governor.
Right. Sorry.
So you probably won't have case law that defines this. So the point is that you're not going to get a specific answer on this. It just probably won't exist because it hasn't happened in multiple situations across the state. What's happened across the state is they've been very creative situations where communities have taken advantage of the opportunity to create opportunities for communities. And I think this is one of those. It's going to fall into that. But I will grant you, I will talk again to town council. And in fact, town council was the one who actually spoke directly with ABCC about the licensing piece. And they encouraged the use of the one-day license issues, which we're going to talk at the Board of Selectmen's issue on Tuesday night. And that's being widely used in Boston on the Rose Kennedy Greenway. So this concept is not foreign to Massachusetts. It's being used in other locations, particularly in Boston, and other communities are looking at it as well. Okay.
Kevin?
I'm sorry. Yes, please go right ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. So just before we go further, I know you want to open this up, and we actually should and need to, but just where we were a minute ago with Mr. DeCosta, and this can be a confusing thing, particularly for lay folks and even for elected officials too. You stated it at the beginning. I just want to reiterate that this session here really is unlike a public hearing that was convened before the Board of Selectmen a week ago. This really is a fact-finding mission that was called and convened at the request of the Board of Selectmen to kind of, take a look at this project from a planner's perspective and make recommendations that might be of assistance in considering a liquor license. And, issues about the governor's order, et cetera, really don't have any place here. It's got nothing to do with this board. And before I just drop it, I would again, you had mentioned it too, we have members of the Board of Selectmen here as well as the administration. If there are areas that need to be explored or you would like, because I heard a lot last week about we don't have the expertise to look at these types of issues. Well, if there are issues to put on the table, let's put them on the table now.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your commenting. So if there's someone else who wants to raise their hand and be recognized, please do so we can do that.
Kevin, I believe Leah had her hand up.
Yeah, I just
go right ahead, Leah.
I just wanted to kind of clarify because, I do think that, as Bill mentioned, this is new and we're kind of figuring things out. And I just wanted to even level set what we're looking at here, because honestly, in some aspects, I'm not even sure if we're looking at, one-day licenses. This came to us as a public hearing for a farmer's pourers license. Come to find out after the fact, that was not the correct avenue to go. So I know we had liquor council on it, but we never really got into it. So now we're here, as I understand it, I just want to level set for everyone for one day application. So that's what will come to the Board of Selectmen next. So there has been a little bit of a shift since that public hearing did open. And, Jeff, your comment about, if we want to raise stuff, I think we need to raise stuff here. In my mind, that's a big piece. If you're raising stuff under a one day versus, temporary dining orders, those are two different pieces for me. So I do think we need an opinion from council. And to be honest, I'm still a little unclear. You know, we were talking about temporary dining orders. Now this doesn't fall under temporary dining orders. Now this is just a 1 day. So I think both boards need to almost level set. What are we looking at in order to, you know, look at it from a site plan? Because with a 1 day, you don't need a public hearing. You don't need a site plan review. And then from a liquor, you know, piece, there is no public hearing there. So we've just kind of shifted a little bit and making sure we kind of get back to the foundation of everyone understanding what we're looking at.
So Leah, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've heard, I believe it is 1 day, but I understand that they were going to say, okay, 30 1-day things in the initial thing and then renewable as time went on. Is that correct?
That's my understanding now.
That's
but we
correct.
haven't met
That's
since
correct.
to kind of
That's
talk
correct.
forward about
Okay.
that. So just so you guys know on this board, you know, what was opened as a public hearing last week is now off the table. This will not be a farmer's pourer's license is only for pouring on premises from where brewing happens. So that can't happen. So,
Okay.
you know, we're kind of shifting, and I just don't think that we kind of talked about that at the beginning of the meeting to let you guys know and the audience know, and even the Board of Selectmen know where we are right now, just because it is so different.
No, I think you are right about that, Leah. My only point in suggesting that if we wanted to put issues on the table, I was referring to the selectmen's sentiments that there was not proper expertise on that board to look at these types of issues that we're supposed to be exploring tonight. And that's totally separate and distinct from farmers pouring license, 1-day licenses, anything like that. That was my only point.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just one point against, going back to Jeff's item again, talking about the zoning piece and the planning piece. The reason why I think it's important that it's before the planning board is because the governor's order talks about waiving the zoning requirements temporarily. And I think that's the issue that allows us to go forward, is because it's a waiving of the 40B requirements. So it's not necessarily something that, again, is going to be, it's allowable. It appears to be allowable under the executive order because of that. So I think that's the
I'm not
reason why.
disagreeing with you on that, Mr. Keegan, but I think that even with the similar ones that we did for existing restaurants, we
Yep.
still looked at public safety matters, you
Oh,
know,
no, I agree.
and stuff like that. So I think that that's part of what we have to discuss.
Exactly. I just want to be clear about the fact that the reason why it is in your arena for tonight is to talk about the zoning pieces, and then of course, which reaches into the site plan discussion. Okay.
Yeah, so
Thank
from my perspective, so we're not looking at this under temporary dining orders. This is just under 1 day is kind of where I think we're at, making sure that we all agree. And then, you know, like you guys talked about safety, I know I had brought up offline, you know, the barriers between the parking and the cars, which has been satisfied. Even like, I don't know if we've ever temporarily tied into water and electricity, and it sounds like now the septic is kind of private, which I didn't realize that. You know, I know normally there'd be, I don't think it would be a bond, but you know, how do we make sure they can go back to how they are? And then I had even suggested offline, like some sort of reservation system. You know, I think if everyone that lives in town knows what happened with the Christmas tree farm on Granite Street, you know, this time of year, everyone wants to get out. There was a really high demand. You know, do we even do some kind of like reservation system just so that we're not overloaded? Maybe it's not, you know, in the long term, but just like the first weekend or two to grab a handle on things. So, you know, from a Board of Selectmen perspective, you know, aside from what the neighbors have brought up, which I get, again, we're not going to make everyone happy on every point, but we're going to, you know, do our best to kind of work together. Were the points that I had in mind coming out of that meeting, Jeff.
Mm-hmm. There's a gentleman, Mr. Falth, who has his hand up. Can we let him speak? Mr. Falth?
Yes, Kurt Floss, and I live at 10A Shea Lane. And I guess at this point, given the discussion and the various people making contributions, I'll take it as a given that this is probably an acceptable application for the use of that lot. It's not what we believed, but it looks like it has been reviewed, and that is the conclusion. So assuming that there is no challenge to that, it looks like the project probably will go ahead. In that case, there are a number of issues I think that we would like to take a look at to try and mitigate some of the problems that we see. They have been brought up and discussed to a certain extent, but I guess I'd like to get more specific. as the residents of Shailene have discussed this, probably one of the biggest concerns we've had is the noise issue. The 180 people, drinking, music, whatnot, especially late at night, the noise carrying. In our summertime, windows are open, and it could be a significant distraction. It appears as if the major approach to solving that problem is the 2 rows of arborvitaes on 6-foot centers. Our is that is not going to be sufficient to reduce the noise. In addition, it probably won't do much to reduce dust, as well as some of the trash that blows around. And so in place of that, I think what we would like to have considered is a solid fence across the length of that the arborvitaes would take place. I think that would be a much better solution and do a better job of blocking the noise, dust, light, trash, perhaps even vermin that might come across, as well as keeping people from cutting across private property if they just happen to park on Shailene, which they may or may not. So that would be a major suggestion that we'd like to have taken under consideration. The other thing is the basic occupancy. If you can reduce the number of people allowed, that would address all of the issues: noise, traffic, parking, dust, everything. I believe that there may have been a change just today where the occupancy has gone from 180 down to 150. Is that correct?
I'd have to ask Mr. Buckley or another person to address that.
Frank, did you?
No, it's Bill. It's still the number of tables times 6 is the maximum occupancy. What we said is typically, and under COVID guidelines, we don't see a lot of parties of 6. So it would have to be all these parties of 6 that show up. It just doesn't happen. In fact, the majority of the parties we see are 2s or 4s. So despite that would be the maximum capacity is the number of tables times 6, but you're never going to get there because under COVID conditions, you can only have 1 party at a table. And if they come in as a 2, they take up those 6. In our restaurant, what we've seen in the COVID environment is that hardly any 6s, and it's usually 2s or 4s.
So when I think the maximum would be 168, even based on that, not 180.
The brief calls for 180.
It does, because that's the number of
6 people at a table and there's 28 tables. That's 168, I believe, not 180.
Mr. Fout, do you understand the distinction that was that Mr. Altieri was trying to make, just as a practical consideration beyond a licensing limitation?
Well, I appreciate what he said.
Yep.
My concern would be, how do you enforce that?
Those are COVID.
We enforce this every day today. The parties come in, we seat a party of 2, we seat a party of 4, we seat a party of 6. It's what we do. It's the nature. And I'd have to say, all of the businesses in your area, I'm sure, are following those guidelines.
If you're at practical capacity and you've got people trying to enter by car, how do you turn them away?
We tell them that we are full and we will take their name and put them on a wait list.
So you have somebody at the entrance that would be specifically set up to do that. Okay.
Yeah. And all the restaurants that I'm aware of are following the same protocol.
Okay. What about, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, what about rodents? Are you going to have traps in place to take care of any rodents? Any problems there? Because that could seriously impact us.
Mr. Falth, can I ask you something? Are you finding that there's been vermin that's come off the property of the restaurants next door to you? I mean, there are 3 or 4 restaurants in there, you know, that are active, and have some that have outdoor seating and others that don't. but they're following whatever the guidelines are. And before that, they could fill to capacity. Has it been an ongoing issue with that through your property?
It has not, no. But the concern here is that this is an open air situation, different than a closed situation as with Conrad's or some of the other restaurants. Plus, I believe they probably have traps around the premises as they do at Stop and Shop to trap any vermin that might be there. And I'm just concerned that given the nature of the beast, the fact that it's open air, people are sitting at tables, they happen to drop food and whatnot, it could attract a lot of rodents and they would naturally come into our area, or could.
Okay.
That's the
I just
concern.
wanted to know if there was an issue or an ongoing issue.
No, there is not.
Very good. I know that Dr. Elfman had a question before as well. If you don't mind, I'm going to skip over to him. If
No,
that's
go
okay.
ahead.
Well, I just want to, I'm sitting here listening and certainly we requested sort of this meeting to air a bunch of concerns. And, I'm coming away with, some good concerns. The liquor issue is something we have to bring up next Tuesday, but I want the people of Shea Lane, the neighbors, to know that me personally, I've come up with a list of things that I'd like to see addressed. The parking signs on Shea Lane. Deputy Chief Noonan talked about maybe an executive order between DPW, the chief, and the Board of Selectmen. I don't think I'd want to wait till an issue happens. Maybe be proactive on something like that and see about getting those signs up there before the pop-up opens. I kind of like the idea of more of a fence versus the arborvitaes. I agree with whoever brought that point up. It's a better barrier, but not only along the back, but whoever brought up that east side also. I think that corner, that turning the corner is very important as a buffer, not just the back part. So I just wanted to, before, because we went off on a tangent a little bit, to let you know that this meeting was important and to hear the concerns and what conditions we as the Board of Selectmen maybe could add to alleviate some of the discomfort that the neighboring community has, the Shea Lane community.
Okay.
And we might come up with a few more.
Is there anyone else who has their hand up that I don't see on my board right now?
I've got one other issue I'd like to bring up.
Please, I'm sorry,
could.
Mr.
Okay.
Clark, go right ahead.
Just in terms of the noise situation, we talked about the refrigeration units that would be on site for the beer and the food, and the fact that there's no generator that would be hooked up to local power. But even so, those refrigeration units be running 24/7, as Richard pointed out, and that can be fairly loud, especially at night when there's not a lot of other ambient noise. Is there any way of doing additional soundproofing on those units to keep down that noise so it doesn't become disturbing?
Can you address that, Mr. Altieri?
Typically refrigeration and you can see that the even Conrad's has outdoor refrigeration. The refrigeration these days is not very loud. We would certainly implement, the current practices with refrigeration. It shouldn't be that loud. I don't have those specs in front of me, but they're certainly not going to be as loud as a generator or even very loud at all.
If that becomes a problem, who do we go to try and resolve it?
It would be the building commissioner, because he's the one that monitors all the sound up at the stadium for concerts and things like that. So
okay,
he would monitor the sounds coming from that area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to address the
Kevin,
meeting?
I'd like to touch 2 points, please.
Please do.
Okay, one would be his concern about the outdoor dining and vermin. Conrad's currently enjoys having temporary outdoor dining. Actually, they have permanent outdoor dining at their facility. And if they don't have a problem with mice or rats, I really don't know if this would generate any more. The other was the point about the fence. If this is a temporary location on a temporary site, is a fence allowed to be erected, or would he have to do a temporary sort of fencing?
I don't know the answer to
You could
that.
do
I
a
think
fence. You could do.
that might be a
You can always put up a fence. I mean, as long as it's on their own property, they could put up a fence, and as long as it's not greater than 7 feet, it wouldn't require a permit.
Okay, just wanted to clarify on that page. Thank you.
There were some responses that we provided to Paige and document. I think maybe the residents have seen that. But some of the issues that are coming up were addressed in that document.
Can you be specific, Mr. Altieri, that you think we're missing?
Yeah, for example, we've already discussed with the Board of Health the concerns around rodents and vermin, and we agreed to implement a pest service for that. And there was also some comments about dust, and we've addressed those dust concerns with the Board of Health. There were a number of items in the letter that we replied back to the planning board that we addressed, that were concerns that were identified here, including the parking, dust, noise, some of the common threads that we've gone over a few times.
And that letter is posted on our website as is all material.
Anyone else that has a hand up that I don't see that'd like to comment or question?
Mr. DeCoste.
Mr. DeCoste, you want to speak again?
Yes, sorry. Just one quick thing following up on Kurt's thing. That lot over there for the last 10 years has been not maintained, overgrown until he cleared it last summer. He never maintained that lot. If we put up arborvitaes, which they say would be a permanent solution, given the water ban we have and given the lack of maintenance that's over there, those trees will be dead. And, what happens then? Who maintains them? How do you get him to maintain them? A fence is a much better solution.
All right, thank you for your point of view. Anything else? Anyone else? Yes, sir. John, I see a gentleman named John.
Yeah, John Greenalch, I live at 14A Shea Lane. My property faces directly the proposed site. I know we said that the COVID ruling was covered. I want to go back to that first. It feels like there's a lot of twisting and changing of the rules and regulations here to allow this to go ahead. I mean, I don't want to go over it all again, but when we go back to the Board of Selectmen, please bring some examples of new businesses that have been erected under this ruling in the local towns. The only place it's happened is down in the city of Boston. So apart from that, the essence of why this was brought in, this ruling, was to protect businesses that may not have outdoor dining and would struggle financially. Mr. Conrad spoke about this very specifically in the last meeting. So that needs some consideration. That's why this ruling was brought into place. It wasn't brought into place for new businesses to come into town. So my second point is, if this is the case and the town really won't pop up, that's really great for the town, which other sites did you look at? Which other sites were considered? There are many sites which are much more, potentially safer, more relevant for something like this. Safety is a big issue. I mean, if anybody who lives around here, which I do, I walk my kids across Chestnut Street. The traffic moves across down that street at high speed. People use it to commute. People don't use it just for this town. They use it to get to 140. There's a lot of traffic coming down it. And we're talking about increasing the pedestrian flow there, increasing the traffic. You've got Patriot traffic as well to consider. It just doesn't feel like there's been consideration about, is this the right site? And it's not a pop-up, because you're plumbing into the sewers, you're bringing in electric, you're bringing in water. So, you know, why are we trying to put a square peg in a round hole here? That's my question.
You know, I don't think that that's, you know, other than the public safety matters, I don't think that that's necessarily relevant to this board. But I agree with you that when you go back to the selectmen on Tuesday, you should definitely, you know, let them know your point of view and have them answer your question.
Is it possible Mr. Noonan could talk about?
May I just chime in on the site selection? I mean, the thing is the town didn't solicit this. This isn't something that we looked for a site. This was a developer owns a site who happens to be in a partnership with a restaurant that's buying the fire station. So they came to us with this. So when speaking about like who choosing, we didn't choose the site. You know, the site was presented to us. So that's typically how it works. It's not like there's a multiple choice sites that we can choose from. You know, they come to us with a proposal, and that's what we have to respond to.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But a lot of the pitch, it's like, hey, we want to come in and do this for the town. It's great for the town. I mean, there's lots of other ways this could be done. There's lots of other open spaces where a one-day pop-up could be done to introduce this new restaurant to the town. It doesn't have to be on that site just because Doug King happens to own it. It does feel like lots of things are being bent and twisted to allow this to go through. And that's my point, is like, why are all these things being allowed? We keep talking about the COVID ruling. I mean, are we being serious? We're using the COVID ruling to manipulate businesses? So I did have a question for Mr. Noonan, just based on my question about the traffic and the speed at which it runs down Chestnut Street. I mean, I stand many a day at the pedestrian crossing there with my kids trying to get across to the parks and walk around the lake, and traffic just flies straight by, doesn't even stop. And, you know, we're going to bring people in. I mean, some people stop who are from Foxborough, who know that crossing's there, and they're respectful to people that are walking on the sidewalks, but many are not. And there's no speed control on that road.
If Mr. Noonan is still here, and can you address that question?
I can. So we researched the data of motor vehicle crashes at Chestnut at Payson, right at that intersection there. In the past 3 years, there's been 0 crashes at that location. In regards to public safety, with the setup and the review, obviously we would be responsible for public safety, as well as making sure that the owners and their team provide responsible liquor service. In checking with Easton PD, they've had 0 liquor violations, and there are currently no issues at that establishment. So when you look at how they run a liquor establishment, they've had 0 issues within the town of Easton, and more importantly, no ABCC violations or liquor violations. In regards to the general traffic in that area, you know, we do the best that we can in regards to traffic enforcement. In that area, we can focus on doing some data collection and checking the speeders. It is a small, narrow road, so vehicles do look as if they're speeding in that location, and we can do more enforcement in that area. And even in the center of town, it's frustrating when you're in a crosswalk and you expect people to stop, but unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. So that could happen at any location within the confines of Foxborough.
Richie, is there a possibility, because I do run around town, John, and run by your location often and cross that street. I know at one point we were successful in it doesn't deter everybody, but you're right. People blow by crosswalks all the time. You know, the little sign that's in front of the high school that's in the crosswalk in the middle of the road? You know, maybe, you know, if this should go forward for the duration of it, that something like that could be temporarily placed.
That's a possibility. Again, it goes into DPW regulations in regards to whether or not that'd be approved for that location.
Mm-hmm. But it's something to look at.
In the crosswalks, you know, we could work with the DPW and have them repaint those crosswalks, and they do that every spring anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But those crosswalks are clearly marked, and they do have the handicap access points that lead down Payson Road and onto Chestnut.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you for those answers. I mean, what I'm leading to, you know, with the question of, is the site the right site? I would highly recommend the area, if this goes ahead, the area which is adjacent to Chestnut Street needs a permanent fence. You know, it can be small, it can be like the one that Conrad's has, but If a little kiddie is sat at one of those tables and God forbid runs out onto the road, they have got no chance. And what you're pitching right now is a post with a chain link on it. That is not going to work. So I think that should be a serious consideration. So, I mean, on top of that, I mean, I would echo everything that other residents of Shea Lane have already said. You know, we've got real reservations about everything that's laid out in the document that we gave you. A large fence obviously would help somewhat. The refrigeration noise, I don't think that answer was actually very good that you gave us back. Sorry to the owner, Frank. You know, just to say, yeah, I don't think they're going to be very loud. Well, you know, there's a lot of those, in all of these debates, that's what I'm hearing back a lot of the time. I don't think this is going to be that bad. I don't think this is going to be an issue. I don't think this is going to be a problem. Have you guys actually researched it and proven out? Because the issue is for us, if these are problems, we're not going to be able to get them fixed. And by the time we get them fixed, you're going to be packing up and you're going to be out of town. So fine, you get your new place built and you're going to move into that. But what I'm trying to say is who is going to help us with these issues if they are issues and nobody's coming with true facts and information. It's like, yeah, maybe it'll be okay.
If I could speak up, John, I don't think that's the case at all. We have sought town council's approval, like the ruling, the ABCC has been contacted. This is an appropriate use. Mr. Altieri, I think, answered, you know, everyone's referring to the truck by Judy's, and we all have our own feeling on that. But actually Conrad's has outside refrigeration now too. And none of the neighbors have mentioned it as a complaint. So he said it's going to be just like that. So if Conrad's doesn't make noise, I don't believe this one will make noise. So I do think that they're giving I think you're being given some very definitive answers. I don't think you and the neighbors necessarily like what those answers are, but I do believe that you are getting very definitive answers. And Mr. Keegan has kindly offered to retouch base with town council again to just verify everything, which I think is a great next step. But you are being provided with the answers.
I would agree to disagree with that. I don't think we are. I mean, the refrigeration question was answered thoroughly. I'll be honest with you, I live a little bit further away. My position probably won't hear it in my yard. Number 5, which is currently up for sale and is going to close in the next couple of weeks, they are within about 30 feet of where all this is going to go on. So some poor family is going to move in there in the next 2 weeks. They've not had a chance to talk about any of this. They probably don't even know what's going on, and they're going to have to listen to it. And so just think about that family when they move in, how they are going to feel.
Understood, and I say this often, and the board members will laugh. You know, people move into our town and they complain about the stadium, but the stadium's been here longer than a lot of us. So this is a piece of property that is allowed to be used for this reason. And you folks all bought your property knowing that. And Doug King, where we live in America, has the right to do what he wants with it within the guidelines. And based on all the research that's been done and shared with this board, as well as the selectmen, obviously there's some more work to be done. He has the right to do what he's asking to do.
Well, I think that's yet to be defined because all of this is being done under the guise of the executive order. And like I said, at the selectmen meeting, please bring some examples where this has been done in another town around here, because it's not. It's been done in the centre of Boston. It's not been done around here. As a one-day event, it's been done. That's totally fine. But you're doing this. I don't know why. I don't know why we're twisting the rules so much, but that's what's going on here.
There's no twisting of the rules, I can assure you.
Well, the executive order does not say you can bring a new business. It does not say that.
Mr. Keegan actually addressed that already at the beginning of the call. This is not a new business. So I think this can be, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but the remaining issues need to be addressed in front of the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, and Tracy, just to kind of clarify, you know, I feel like there's some pieces that we're still working through. So I just
absolutely
wouldn't be
I don't disagree
about where we are right now, because I feel like we're still making our way through some of those pieces.
We are still making our way, but I do think, Leah, that some of these questions have been addressed and folks don't necessarily like the answers, so they continue to state that they haven't been. So, but I agree, there's some that we still are working through, but some have been answered. And whether people agree with them or dislike them or not, they've been answered.
Well, like I say, the best way to solve this is to bring some examples of where this has been done in another town. And then we'll be like, okay, other people are doing it. So let's do that. Or let's show me another example in this town where it's happening. So that will clarify, right? Because then we'll be able to say, yeah, that was why it was brought in, because everyone else is doing it.
But then you're tossing out the zoning guidelines and the executive order. That honestly makes no sense. Just because, if somebody jumped off, as my mother would say, if somebody jumped off the bridge, would you follow them? No. We need to follow the guidelines of the executive order and our zoning bylaws. That's what we need to do.
But Trace, at this point, I think that's really a selectman-based issue, and John is correct to make the request, and, we'll see how they address it come their meeting. So I just think it's a little far afield for our general purpose here, even though we're meeting together. Is there excuse me, John, if you have nothing else, I'm going to ask if anyone else out there has something that they'd like to address.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else has their hand up that I don't see that would like to speak? I don't see any either. So, Paige, anything else you think that we need to do before we conclude this part of the meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I think you need to come up with sort of a, I'm trying to think of, we need something actionable. So what I mean is maybe a list, or, the problem is after the selectmen's meeting, I sent my whole list of concerns over to Bill Buckley, and he's already addressed them. But I think, and that's not a problem. It's actually good by being facetious. So a lot of the stuff has been addressed, as Tracy said. But if we have any outstanding issues, I've been taking some notes, about the sign. So I think we want to memorialize some of the conditions under which, you think are really important, like Gary's point about Conrad. So, I have the note here about, no parking boards for Conrad's and Shea Lane. I have a note here to Jeff's point where he was concerned about signs inside the circle. And I think Bill Buckley said that those would be on the inside of the no entrance sign. So certain conditions like that, like if this were to go through using the expertise you all have, maybe what do you think about the fence versus the arborvitaes? How do you feel about the screening that's proposed? I think those are the types of things that the selectmen would like to hear from you as to, like, if they were to approve this, what conditions could be imposed to ensure protections.
One thing I'd like to add, Mr. DeCoste brought this up, is it's my pet peeve is lighting. I completely believe if the site gets done, there needs to be adequate lighting for the safety of those going there, but I don't want light spill into the neighborhood. So I'd like to get a better, not now, but that's just one thing I think that needs to be considered.
Well, it was, and I feel that Bill talked about it a bit. So if you have a problem with it, we have to speak about it now. As it is, as he said, it's the string lights inside the facility and then no lights out in the parking area. And I'm fearful, you might have a concern with that, but I think it was one point that it's the ending hours are going to be pretty just, in the summer, it stays light till late. Obviously it could get different, but I did heed his point, and especially in consideration of Shea Lane. The fields and such, they don't have parking out there. So it's that balancing act. We tend to overlight things, and I know you're worried about it, but knowing the neighbors and whatnot, I just wonder, how far do you want to go? And given that it's temporary, what kind of lighting could you really do? Like, I wouldn't want a light pack that has a generator.
Right.
I wouldn't want anything glaring. So like, how do you find that balancing? Maybe it's something where we could do like a condition where if it's determined it's too unsafe, some lighting with provisions and the planning board would review it or something like that down the road. But I feel like maybe for the summer, it might be okay. And then if this were to continue, into when it gets dark, then we might want to look at it and see if it's a problem. But I'd hate to create a problem like some.
I agree. I think that'd be a good condition.
And getting back to your point, though, I do think that the concern about the arborvitaes on the berm not being as either a sound barrier or otherwise a safety barrier, I do think that maybe we as a board should have them seriously consider the permanent or a hard fence, let's call it. I don't know if it'll be permanent or they'll remove it at a later date, but I think the point on both sides of the property was a good suggestion in order to, it would cut down on the amount of refuse that might get blown into the properties at Shea Lane. It would certainly do something about helping to maintain more privacy and sound and sound attenuation. So I think we should definitely have that in there as well.
Kevin, I think that's a perfectly reasonable expectation. And just to address, I forget where I came from, there was another issue that a suggestion of bring a hard fence on the Chestnut Street side. And I would not be in favor of that. That was not the reason that we have those blocks in there.
Right.
It was not for keep people from running out. It was to keep vehicles from coming in.
Right.
So I
And
think that
there is a fence there. It's just, it's that the chain on a pole thing. And, again, it wouldn't stop a child who's determined to crawl over the rope across the sidewalk into the street, but that's kind of where the parents come in, I think, so it's that balancing act of,
And having never attended one of these, Jeff has, and some other people who have attended, here at the meeting tonight may have. I don't generally think that, I'm not suggesting it's not a family-friendly thing. I think it is, but I'm not so sure how many people, come in with young children to a pop-up of this nature. Mr. Altieri could address that. Maybe it is very popular with families with young children, and maybe it's more older kids and adults. So, but regardless, I happen to agree with the point of view that, parental guidance, for your own kids, regardless of whether you're at Union Straw, on a concrete pad, or you're at Conrad's, you're obligated to take care of your family to a certain extent. So I think that needs to be addressed at that level. And I agree that I agree with Jeff. It's not designed to keep, people from running out into Chestnut Street. It's designed to keep a wayward traffic situation coming in, and injuring people who are at the site. Yes, Jeff.
Yeah, just one other thing, and at the risk of being out of bounds, it's not really a part of where we should be going. But since selectmen, we're looking for just kind of, an advisory in general, and because I have had some, experience here. Honestly, there may be some consideration given to looking at the hours of operation, because in my experience, these types of establishments commonly close a little earlier. Maybe it might be 9 o'clock. And the other thing, I've never actually, and I don't want to say it doesn't happen, but I've never experienced live entertainment either. And that may be another consideration to look at that could help move this thing along.
Right.
But that's just for the selectmen.
Possibly the entertainment stop at 9 and place closed at 10 or something like that, Jeff.
Well, no, I've actually never seen live entertainment at these types of venues, but that's just me. So, just food for thought for
Maybe
when.
Clarify that just for everybody's edification. Frank, are you able to, I've heard you talk about it a little bit, but are these people with like amplifiers? Is this,
typically
I picture a singer with a guitar, an acoustic guitar, very low key, but I think maybe that is something parameter wise that should be discussed, maybe not for this board, but for the selectmen, of like, what type of entertainment, what's the most extreme entertainment you could envision?
Well, Paige, what we were trying to do, and I want to be clear about this, is during COVID-19, several entertainers have not been able to, play, and there's really a desire out there for this. But you're right, it's typically 1 or 2 or 3 people together, a trio, that are playing acoustic music. That being said, I don't want to mislead anybody. Even acoustic music uses amplification.
Correct.
But what we are proposing, and what we put in the letter, was that we would distribute the sound in such a way that we wouldn't have a single point that was blaring out the sound, that the sound would be evened out throughout the site and more, at a lower level. Typically, and I've been to, breweries all over New England and then some, All of these places have entertainment, and it's a big piece of it. And we were thinking that it would be a great opportunity to allow local entertainment, like cheerleading groups, dance groups, these small dance studios that haven't been able to really have an audience to play to during the COVID time, to allow them to come out and play in front, or demonstrate in front of an audience of their friends and family. It would be a great venue to allow that kind of activity. So I would be hesitant to try to constrain it too much, but we would be willing to work with you on that, whatever you think is appropriate. But let's think about some of the opportunity that we can provide to local artists and maybe local community members who want to showcase their dance studio, or want to showcase their junior cheerleaders, or who want to showcase some other band, high school band activity. None of these entertainers have been able to do that, and we thought it would be a great to bring to this. Now, if you want us to do that at earlier hours, we probably can do that. But what we see is when the entertainment ends, people tend to move out. We're trying to maximize the opportunity that's out
Okay, thank you, Mr. Altieri. Yes, Gary.
Just in the interest of making some recommendations, I would suggest a couple. One would be the fence on two sides of the property. I like that idea. And I don't think it necessarily has to be 6, 7, 8 feet high. It could possibly 4 or 5. You don't want to feel like you're in a capsule, So I think that would be detrimental to the applicant as well, to the neighbors, just looking at this big white fence, so to speak. I also like the idea of eliminating hours, as Jeff said. I think that's very appropriate because of the location. And what else was I going to say? Yeah, that's all I can remember at the time.
Did you want to speak, Ron?
No, I think Gary said enough.
Okay. If there's no one else who has a commentary, then I think we'll end this.
Excuse me, Gary. I did remember. The lighting would be the other issue. And I wonder if that could be something the selectmen could make as a requirement, that it gets revisited as necessary, much the way we do with a lot of planning board decisions.
I think that would probably still come back to us, and then through us, the zoning enforcement officer, which is typically who would deal with it.
Mr. Chairman, on that point, Gary raised, because of the fact, the nature of the licenses that's going to occur now on the 1-day licenses, there will be plenty of opportunity to continue to review this over that period of time. So I think that's a fair comment.
Okay, good. Anyone else?
Yeah, one last thing, Kevin.
Please, sir.
Yeah, I just want to thank the planning board for putting this meeting on. Very informative for me, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It was good to hear the points of view of you and Leah and Mr. Keegan as well, for areas that we haven't necessarily, been in. Paige may have been there, or others, but maybe the board members hadn't attended. So it was good for us.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it just shows, two groups coming together to hopefully do what's best for town and the neighbors and everyone. I think that's everyone's intent.
Right. Very good. So then if we don't have anyone else who's really who has a need to comment or question, then I think that I would call for this portion of the meeting to end. If there's anything else that we have on the agenda, because I don't have one in front of me, Paige, please let me know.
We do have one more item on the agenda.
Okay.
So we'll switch to that. So anybody who wants to stay or talk about 131 Moore Street, stay on.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate the time tonight. Thank you.
Good night.
Okay.
Good night.
So, Mr. Chairman, we have Bill Buckley here, and he has asked for an informal discussion to talk about 131 Moore Street. So I'm sure he's setting up over there now.
So, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, Good evening. Thank you for staying. I know it's late. I will try and be brief. What I'd like to present to you tonight, your first look at this, and actually it's the first look for even your professional staff, is a project down at 131 Moore Street. And what this is this is the bleachery. So what I want to do is I want to put up a plan to show you, actually, that goes to give you kind of a look where we are. So this is Moore Street. This is the bleachery pond. So you'd be coming up. You're right. I'm sorry. I didn't share it. Sorry about that. And which one is it? Here we go. Is it up now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So here's Moore Street. This is the bleachery pond right here. This would be coming from Cocasset Street. This is heading over to Mansfield to the left. So I know this is kind of hard to see, but this is the bleachery. So the buildings that are here, this is the archery, the old gym, the wood forms place, and then it wraps around to the right, where the chimney used to be there, and actually the old bleachery. But if you kept going past it and you take a right, there is a way that goes there. I'm going to zoom up even more now, kind of do it. And this was subdivided back in 1975. I was in the 10th grade, and and what they did is the owner of it was a couple of local guys, and they subdivided it into these 4 lots. So there's these buildings here on the right. There's a couple of buildings on the left. That is, I'm trying to think what they are now, and I can't think of it. I've been in there. It's actually a machine shop, and I'm not sure exactly what they've built, but this is a house right here. And then as you go further back, this is a Quonset hut. This is a brick building that used to be, I think, the power station, which was run because the Rumford River goes underneath of this building, and it provided power to the facility at the time. Now, of course, it doesn't, and then it goes out and around. But this building here, and then this is what I call a Quonset hut. And then you go further back, these are all gone. Those were old structures that actually were part of the bleachery. And that's what it was. It was a bleachery. So they were containers that must have held some type of chemicals. But they're gone now. What's back there, I'm going to show you in a minute, is a bunch of trailers. But Fine Landscaping runs their business out of this area here, which again, I'm going to show you in the business. And what they want to do is they would like to build a new permanent facility back there, a garage and an office for themselves in the same general area they're actually operating out of. But what they would do is they don't want to just build back there, which they could do, but they want to purchase 2 acres of land, which again, I'm going to show you in a moment. And what that would require us to do is to further subdivide Lot 3 and Lot 1. But this is not a public way. It's not a way created by under the Subdivision Control Act. It's basically an 18-foot wide way that's mostly paved, and it's gravelled at the end. And back in 1975, when this was built, you'll note this note, it says the planning board retains the right to question the adequacy of the way to Moore Street in the event of further subdivision. So I think what they were trying to do is to reserve their ability to take another look at this, because there's a lot of acreage back there. You can see that's 12 acres. But so what I want to do now is I want to show you, I want to bring up, I don't know why this is not doing this. This is an aerial photo. And again, I know it's tough to see. Let me see if I can bring it in better. So let me go down here. Moore Street is off the bottom. This is that first building you see on the right, what I was talking about earlier, the gym, archery.
Bill,
There's nothing on the
I
screen.
think you need to stop sharing and then reshare with the new image.
Yeah, I keep doing it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
How's that?
There you go, better.
Okay. So what I've done is I've taken the property lines and actually the future property lines and superimposed it over, an aerial photo. So here's the bleachery pond. Here's the first building. This is the way coming in. There's the manufacturing facility. There's the little, brick building there. This is a Quonset hut that's currently used by an auto it's auto body or tow shop as well. And then back in here, I know it's difficult to see, but let me zoom in it even more. So if you kept going back here, this is there's a garage back here. It's kind of a Quonset hut, and there's some temporary buildings here. These are sheds in this area here. I think there's 2 or 3 of them. And what they want to do, what Mr. Fine would like to do is to build, he wants to subdivide this lot. So this is the existing lot line for that parcel 1. And it's 2 acres. And what we would do is take about 7/10 of an acre of it out. And the reason we're doing that is because we have to give this new lot, which we're calling lot 1B, at least 50 feet of frontage, which is the zoning requirement down there. And then we create this new 2-acre lot that would wrap like this. And what he would do is, and he has already started doing this, is moving all of these trailers out of there and then turn it into his facility. So you'd have the office and the garage. This garage would stay. It's going to require, I think, some zoning relief, at least a finding or a special permit from the ZBA. We haven't got to that point yet. And then those sheds I was talking about right here would get moved someplace on the lot. But the intent would be to create a landscaper's yard. So it would be materials, mulch, stone, stock, trees, shrubs, etc. And he would also have his vehicles, of course, stored there. The remaining land would be back here, and I'll zoom out in a minute. And that would go down from 11.3 to about 10.5 acres. And it would still retain access through here because this frontage would still exist and it would be more than the 50 feet. So this lot would still be a buildable lot or a lot conforming to zoning. And we're not proposing anything for that lot. It would still continue to be what it is, unfortunately, which is just a lot that they store trailers. And you can see how much it is. It covers a large chunk of it. So that is, let me put up another drawing if I can find one.
Can I just interrupt you for 1 second, Bill?
Sure.
Once the lot is subdivided the way they're looking at, so part there on like 2.0 acres of lot, whatever that is, with this, right in there. Are those trailers going to remain there, or the fine's going to have them move them further back?
To remove them. Everything within the 2 acres that they're buying is going to be removed.
Okay, thank you.
And what I'd like to do is I would like the board to come out and look at it. I mean, it's really hard to picture this here. It's really, what I really want you to see is how bad it looks. And what I want you to see is that this is going to be an improvement. It's not the whole 11 acres, but it's 2 acres of it. It's a start. And I know that the town, Bill Gaspara, Conservation for years, has been trying to get those trailers cleaned up. And this is a start for it.
Bill, will those trailers go off property or they just get smushed over closer to the wetlands or something?
Probably they would get moved, not moved closer to the wetlands. They would get moved. I would
stay
assume.
on site. They would not leave the site.
I can't say they would be removed. That would be a question I have to ask. Probably not. They would probably just stay there. Moved elsewhere.
If I may, I'm in a butter here. I can see those trailers from my backyard when the foliage is sparse. So it would really appreciate if those were moved, like off-site.
We
Or
can
out of
talk to them.
state.
Yeah, we can. Somebody owns them. I don't know who, but we can talk to the about that, where they're gonna go and hopefully be moved out.
Well, I
Excuse me.
wonder if this is a leverage point, only because I'm assuming the land, I mean, I don't know who owns the trailers and if it's the same person who owns the land, but I'm assuming they want to do this land sale possibly to get money. So is there a way to sort of incentivize them to say, hey, yeah, the board, but like we want to start removing trailers, not, just moving them around. So is there any leverage here where we can make that a condition?
So let me answer a couple of your questions, Paige. It is the owner of the trailers is not the owner of the land. He leases that piece. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is the owner of the land is giving this land to his daughter. My understanding is, and his daughter is Jeannie Fine. So he's going to be giving it, that her father owns the land. Erwin Kamen is his name. So, but we certainly can ask, and you can certainly push for that. If that's an important condition, I mean, yes.
Well, even before I knew Gabby, I didn't know Gabby could see it. I mean, so all of that, my horror was seeing that. I mean, it looks like they've just been dropped there. I mean, just from a bird's eye view, it's hard to look at. So just from a town's perspective, it just seems like unsightly. And granted, no one sees it, but it just doesn't look well planned or well organized or well anything. So.
And they're also violating, the some of the conservation lines there, the buffers.
Yeah, and conservation actually has an order. I think it's an order. Yeah, an order of conditions on there. But let me show you this. Can you see that rendering came up?
Yes.
Okay, good. So again, this is the big view. So you can see, this shows the buildings better. You kind of see how they fit. Here's the way, and this is the lot, and this is what we're talking about. So this would be the new building, would be keeping the Quonset hut there, and then this area would be the area that's being used. And what we're proposing as an improvement, so I've had discussions with the fire department, because access is important, and I'm sure that would be one of the major concerns. So I have had conversations with the fire department, and what they've said is, look, if you improve the access down there, if you, pave 18 feet, because we can't pave any more than 18 feet. Literally, you can't. So 18 feet is the legal easement, and you're physically jammed in there when you're driving back there. So the fire department said, if you pave 18 feet and give us a cul-de-sac at the end, which I've shown, and it's not one of the big ones like a subdivision, it's just like one at like Garrett's Plain Road, a temporary one. And if you sprinkler the building, then they would be satisfied. And I hate to speak for them like that, but I'm sure they're going to give you, if we continue to move forward, they're going to give you formal response. So that's how we've come up with this. We came up with paving it, pavement, and then that cul-de-sac would be paved, and then this would be the layout. And water, we're still trying to figure it out. There's water there, but it comes in from Mansfield. Mansfield doesn't really know where everything is, so we're trying to figure that out. But Foxborough has made it clear, Foxborough Fire has made it clear that they will not be in favor of this, will not give you a positive recommendation unless there is sprinklers. So we have to figure out how it's coming in from Mansfield and making sure that it has adequate volume and pressure, or we would have to bring it in from Foxborough, which has a line that runs cross country from Morse to Spring along the back, which of course is not our preferred solution because of the length of run. So we know we have to do that. We haven't figured it out yet, but we're working on that. But tonight we just wanted to talk to you, to take your temperature, and to see, because of course they don't want to spend all the money on me and on attorneys if we need zoning relief, if the board is just not interested. So my suggestion, I certainly am not expecting any decision tonight. My suggestion is if you know, you can take a walk. You don't need me, but if you want to, I'll go. I'll be there. I'll make myself available. We can go out and walk around and take a look at the site, and you can get a feel for it. You can certainly go out by yourself and take a look to get a feel for what it looks like. And then we can come back again in a couple of weeks and maybe talk in more detail about if the board would be interested in allowing us to move forward or not. I mean, we want to know either way because, as I said, we don't want to waste anybody's time.
So, Bill, I lost connection there for a little bit, so I missed part of this presentation. But what would be the reason that the board? What is the reason you're concerned that the board might not want to do this?
Because back in 1975, the planning board, when they did that original subdivision, put that note on the plan that said that they reserve the right to revisit adequacy of that way if there gets further subdivided. We are further subdividing.
Okay. Well, I mean, my initial, you know, without having seen it on the ground and having seen what you've presented, is that my initial thing would personally not to be interested in objecting if it's going to improve, you know, the site back there and get the trailers preferably moved off site, but at least, you know, allow the fines. It sounds like somehow the fines are related to the people who own the land. And if it's going to make an improvement and allow their business to continue, I'd probably be open to the idea pending us actually getting out there and seeing it in person. And that's just my own personal point of view. I'm not suggesting any other members should have feelings that are not different than that.
Bill, what's the current state of that right of way?
So let me share again. I'll give you. So if we go down here from Moore Street till about, I'm going to say about there, approximately, it's paved. It's paved. And then beyond that, it's gravel. I mean, it's solid gravel. It's not mud or anything like that, but it's solid gravel. So what we would be proposing to do would be to pave, here's an even better one. So you can see it to right there. That's paved till approximately there. And then beyond this is gravel. And actually there's the gravel road wraps around to the right to further access behind this building. So what we're proposing would be to pave from the approximately where the dam is. You'll see it when you go out there, can't miss it, and to the end of the cul-de-sac. And it would be 18 feet wide, just, you know, normal 3 inches of pavement. And that would provide the access.
And is it reasonable to assume that at some future point, there could be other uses for the remainder of that lot?
I would certainly hope so. You know, I've actually tried to get people to go back there, but the problem is the access. You know, what a great spot for something, but you know, when you're dealing with an 18-foot wide driveway, it's tough to convince somebody to do something back there. So, you know, I think realistically, that building probably to the right would have to come down. It actually that had a fire not too long ago.
Right.
So if somebody went in there and bought it and took it down, then yeah, I think it would be realistic to say that somebody could purchase that and then purchase the backland and maybe do something, because you'd be able to have an access that's not pinched like it is right there.
Right. The only reason I just brought that up is the positioning of the cul-de-sac and, you know, whether it should be extended a little further, but, you know, you would know better than that.
And we put it there. The reason it's there is I know it's hard to see, but right here, we want to save this. We want to save the Quonset hut that's there, and there's a salt shed next to it. So we're trying to save those two structures. And that was when I was saying that I'm not sure if we needed some type of zoning relief. I mean, they're there, they've been there a long time. They certainly look like it, but you can see how close they are to the road. So they're obviously non-conforming, but how does that work? So that would be a question, I guess, for the building commissioner, and then maybe perhaps ultimately the zoning board of appeals.
What's the purpose of that salt shed?
They store salt in it, and it's part of their business, I
For
guess.
the landscaping business?
In the winter, they do plowing.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Okay.
So just to clarify, you were talking about pulling frontage, although insufficient frontage, but then you referred to this as a driveway. So what's the actual status of that access?
Well, I haven't had a talk with Paige on this yet, and I apologize for that. But the planning board in the past has granted frontage, has determined that it has adequate access, and has determined that that it met the standard back then. So we're not extending the way. The way is the way. That's why we're taking the 50 feet off of that last lot on the left. And we just want to continue to use that, but to create a new lot. So I don't know what the legal thing was. We'd have to sit down with Paige, and if we continue to move forward with this, Frank Spillane will be our permitting attorney, and he just has to research it and have some discussions. And that's another step that we need to deal with.
Fair enough. Kevin, I agree with you. I would have no reason not to pursue this.
I don't really see any reason either.
Yeah, agreed. I've got like a ride out to the site, but I agree.
Thanks.
Right. So if anybody wants to, you can contact me directly or through Paige or whoever. And if we want to have multiple members, I'd be glad to do it. I can do it individually, however you want to do it. I'm going to be away starting next Thursday for about a week, but then we can do it before then, or we can do it after then. That will give us time actually still to keep working through this water issue. And then what we'd like to do is we'll come back after everybody's had a chance to think about it. We appreciate tonight everybody's pushing it, but after you see it, we just want to make sure that you still feel that way after you see it.
Yeah. If you, what's your optimum coming back time, Bill, based on our schedule? We have May 13th and May 27th, not to pin you down, but just to have an understanding of like how fast you think your side's going to move.
I think May 13th would be good to come back and talk to the board. We'll have a little more information at that point, and maybe a little bit more of a sketch showing how we're going to lay out the site facility for that. And then we can, and then after, if we have a good meeting there, then we can actually do the actual engineering design and file.
That's town meeting week. So everybody who goes to town meeting will have 2 meetings that week. I'm sure you'll all be there.
So, with bells.
I'll be in Hilton Head.
Nice.
Are you going to not be here on the 13th, Tracy? Is that something we need to know?
Yes, I'm actually typing you, Kevin, and Diana an email.
Okay.
How kind of
Yes,
you.
I will be out of town.
Good for you.
Traveling begins. Let the world open up.
No, I'm so excited to get on a plane.
Well, thank you very much. I know it's late. I appreciate everybody staying late.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else we need to address, Paige?
Yeah, bedtime.
Okay. So
All right.
do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
For a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Kevin, yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Gary, yes.
Tracy, speak.
Good.
All right. I think we're adjourned.
Night, night.
Night.
Good night, everyone.
Night, everyone.
Thank you.